I feel like most people's like big pivotal moments or trips in their life are similar. They start similarly, like, oh my god, what if we went to blah 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 blah, what if we did this, what if we did that? Like, it's the things you think of when you're lying awake at night, you know? For 9 students in 1959, that's how this started too. They were all experienced hikers and skiers, actually, and they thought, I'll go on that trip. We all have a pretty good sense of what we're doing and the equipment and, you know, the temperatures right now. Why not? It'll definitely be a good story, and it'll be something we remember. Sadly, we won't really ever know how the idea started or how it came up in conversation or whatever, because none of them came back. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident. I'm just gonna get right into the meat and potatoes because I really don't want to bore people. You know what I mean? I'm really excited about this. This is like one of my favorite little niches, you know what I mean? I was gonna do makeup, but I'm feeling a bit sick. So this is as good as it's gonna get. I have a coffee instead of, I have a cuppa instead of the mocktail situation, because that was terrible. On January 23rd, 1959, Igor Dyatlov led a team of 10, or was set to lead a team of 10 experienced, seasoned hikers to the Otorten, the peak of Otorten in the Ural Mountains. So initially there were 10 members, but like the day before they left, one of the members got sick and turned back. So only 9 went. At this time of the year, this would be classified as a level 3 route, just because of how bad the temperatures were. The temperatures were set to reach under 30 degrees Celsius or under 22 degrees Fahrenheit, which is just like, it's really cold. It's 20 degrees normal right now in Virginia, and it makes me want to just, you know. A few weeks after they arrived at what was supposed to be their ending, the Vichy village, they were going to send a telegram to their sports club, but weeks came and went. Nobody got a message. Officially, on February 20th, a search party was released to go into the Ural Mountains and try and find them. It took a few weeks, but finally, they found like the first glimpse of something. It was a collapsed tent. Not fully collapsed, but clearly like disgruntled. They looked inside, and it was actually really neat and organized. There was even food sliced up on a plate, like they were just about to eat it. And weirdly, probably most weirdly, almost all of their boots were inside the tent. Then, after a careful look, they saw that the tent had been slashed open. Later, after being reviewed by a seamstress, we found out that it was slashed open from the inside, and the zipper was functioning. Several hundred yards away from the tent, there were 2 bodies in their underwear, laying by what seemed to be the remains of a fire. These would later be identified as the bodies of Yuri Krivonchenko and Yuri Duroshenko. Yuri K had burns all over his body and a piece of flesh of some sort in his mouth. Later, we would find out that that was actually a piece of his own hand. Most likely his knuckle that he'd bitten off himself. Not far away from that, 3 more bodies were discovered. These were the bodies of Igor Dyatlov, the leader, Zineda Kolmogorova, she went by Zina, and Rustem Slobodin, who went by Rustik. I'm really sorry, I'm trying my best. All of these bodies were found facing like they were moving towards the tent, like moving back towards the tent, which was different from, it seems counterintuitive if we're slashing our way out of it, right? I mean, let's just keep to the notes. All of these students' deaths were written off very quickly as hypothermia because a lot of them had experienced what was very obvious paradoxical undressing. If you don't know what paradoxical undressing is something that people experience when they have hypothermia, where they're so hot that they actually remove their clothing despite the cold. So This is associated with about 20 to 50% of all hypothermic deaths, which is really, just so crazy. But I didn't answer any of the questions. And there was one question that was really still looming. Where were the rest of them? It wouldn't be until May, months later, when the snow had melted a little bit more, that an indigenous Mansi tribesman hunter discovered a snow den, or what once was a snow den. Inside, rescue workers found 3 bodies. These were the bodies of Nikolai Thibault Brignol, who went by Thibault, Alexander Kolevatov, that sounds right, Semyon Zolotarov, who went by Sasha, Ludmila Dubanina. Also, did I say they found 3 more bodies? They found 4 more. Yeah, they found 4 more, because it's 9 total. I'm so sorry. So, we have Alexander, Nikolai, Semyon, and Dubanina. Is that her last name? Fuck. Ludmila. 3 of these deaths could not be explained by hypothermia, even when they were trying to kind of write them off. Thibault Brignole had skull fractures so deep that they found bone particles in his brain. Semyon and Ludmila both had crushed chests. They both were missing their eyes, like completely, sockets empty. And Dubanina was also completely missing her tongue. The initial investigation was actually closed quite quickly, and the authorities and autopsy reports suggested that the hikers died from a compelling natural force. So let's go through the autopsies, because they're pretty crazy. I also probably should have put a warning earlier, but if graphic nature is not really your thing, I'll see you on the video on Saturday, all right? Take a break. Smoochies. No hard feelings, okay? These are definitely going to be some graphic things. I'm sure the skull and bone marrow comment was as well, and I'm sorry for not warning you. We are going to start with Yuri Doroshenko. In his hair, the expert found particles of moss and pine needles, and his hair was burned on the right side of his head. This could have been proximity to the fire, so not too crazy. His ear, nose, and lips are covered with blood, swollen upper lip, and a dark red hemorrhage. His right cheek soft tissue was covered with gray foam, gray liquid coming out of his open mouth. Inner surface of the right shoulder has 2 abrasions, both like 2 by 3 centimeters each. No bleeding in the tissues, 2 cuts that are like on the skin. The right armpit has a bruise on it, brown red bruises on his forearm, swelling and small abrasions in his hand. So both hands and fingertips are especially dark purple. All fingers and toes are severely frostbitten, so he probably would have required amputation if he did survive. On the inner surface of his left shoulder, there was another abrasion, and more on his elbow. Left forearm, there's a surface skin wound with blood on it and similar bruises on the shins of both the legs. So the foamy gray fluid that was found on his right cheek kind of starts the speculations that before death, something or someone was pushing on his chest cavity. So this method was used for interrogation in certain places of the world, one of them being Russia. They also said that this could be a really nasty fall from a tree, but that aspect was ignored in the final papers. So everything came to just like hypothermia, and the death experts described the injuries as non-life threatening, like all the bruises and abrasions, that he must have been hitting himself with rocks and ice and surrounding objects in a state of agony. I'm like, I never heard of that. But we're going to move on to Yuri Krivonishenko, who was 23 at the time of his death. He was discovered underneath a cedar tree. He had bruises on his forehead. He had bleeding in the right temporal and occipital region due to damage in the temporalis muscle. He had a bruise around the left temporal bone. The tip of his nose was missing, no traces of blood, meaning that it was probably bitten off post-mortem. Frostbitten ears, portion of the epidermis from the right hand is found in the mouth of the deceased. So this is we'll get to that. Back of the right hand is swollen, fingers are brown and purple, tips on the fingers are dark in color, skin abrasions all around the soft tissue of the hands. This is important to keep in mind. Palm of the right hand is bluish red in color. In the middle phalanx? Can you tell I didn't graduate college? Okay, detachment of the 2 centimeter epidermis in the back of his hand. A lot of hand stuff going on. Okay, then we have abrasions along the clavicle line, edge of the rib, pink and brown bruise on his butt, skin lesions with straight edges and sharp corners in depth, which insinuates that it was a weapon. There are more bruises found on his femur and tibia, dark red abrasions on the thigh, edema on the left foot, and there's a burn area on the sides of his right foot, on the entire outer surface actually of the leg. There's a few things that people speculate here as to why these deaths are strange. So we talked about how both of these were technical paradoxical undressing. However, there's speculation that the undressing was actually done post-mortem, either by other members of the group to stay warm or something else. And the reason he bit off his finger, they speculate that he was trying to stifle a cry, or he was in pain. Really sad. Really just a terrible thing to think about. All right, we're gonna go into Igor Dyatlov, who is the leader. He was also 23. He had minor abrasions on the forehead, on his eyelids, brown abrasions above the left eyebrow, and his left cheek, brown red abrasions on both cheeks. He had dried blood on his lips, lower jowl, bruised knees without bleeding into the underlying tissue, so insinuating it came from the inside. Both ankles had brownish red abrasions and a hemorrhage into the underlying tissue. There was a single incision in the lower third of his right tibia and many small scratches of dark red color into the lower third of his right forearm and palm surface. Purple gray discoloration on the back side of his right hand, so just bruises on his hands again. They all have these hand things. And metacarpophalangeal joints on the right hand had red and round bruises. This is a really common injury, in hand-to-hand fights. Okay, it's just interesting. So to get a better idea of where the injuries are, you can just make a fist. You know what I mean? And it's this kind of whole area. No internal injuries. Okay, we are moving on to Zinaida Kolmogorova, who was 22. She is one of the 2 women who were on this trip. So she was better dressed than anyone, because even Igor had his shirt open. She had a dark red abrasion on the right frontal eminence, a pale gray area above the right eyebrow, dark red abrasion on the upper eyelids, brown red grays on the bridge of the nose, numerous abrasions on the left cheekbone, bruised skin on the right side of the face, bruises again on both of the hands on the back of the metacarpal, phalangeal, and interphalangeal joints. So I'm guessing that's your fingies, because it's your phalanges, right? She had a wound with jagged edges and missing skin on the back of her right hand at the base of her third finger. Lots of frostbite, a bright, long red, bright bruise on the lumbar region of her torso, and the bruise looks like it's left by a weapon. The autopsy report specifically says a baton. Cause of death is hypothermia due to a violent accident. No shit. Rustem Solodin. Hemorrhages in the temporalis muscles, minor brownish red abrasions on the forehead, 2 scratches between these abrasions, brownish red bruise on the upper eyelid of the right eye with a hemorrhage into the underlying tissues, traces of blood discharge from the nose, swelling, and a lot of small abrasions on both sides of the face. Bruises in the metacarpophalangeal joints on both hands, bruised knuckles. We're just gonna say that. Okay. Brown cherry bruises on the left arm and the left palm. He had swollen lips, bruises in the tibia, epidermis is torn from the right forearm, and a fracture of the frontal bone, this is a skull trauma. So the autopsy person, mortician? No. Doctor? I'm not sure. Boris Alexievich Vozrozhiny suggested that the fracture in his skull could be done with a blunt object, similar to the wound that was found on our lady friend. They then said that he might have suffered loss of coordination due to hypothermia, the frostbite, whatever, and that the initial shock right after that blow would speed up death due to hypothermia, but this has kind of been ruled out as almost impossible. Like a fall from his own height wouldn't have caused this abrasion. Like it's just really, it was just like really rare. You know what I mean? So kind of like completely freaking weird. Now we're getting into the freaky parts. So now we're gonna talk about Ludmila Dubinina. She was only 20. It's crazy. Ludmila wore a short sleeve shirt, a long sleeve shirt, 2 sweaters. She had soft tissues missing around her eyes, eyebrows, and nose, damaged tissues around her left temporal bone. Eye sockets are completely empty, eyeballs are missing, nose cartilage is broken and completely flattened. Soft tissues of the upper lip are missing, teeth and upper jaw completely exposed, tongue is missing. Ribs 2, 3, 4, and 5 are broken on the right side, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are broken on the left. Massive hemorrhage in the heart's right atrium, and a bruise to the middle left thigh. So not only was the tongue missing, but this same mortician autopsy dude describes the missing hypoglossal muscle as well as the muscles on the floor of the tongue. So basically like a big chunk of her mouth was missing. You know what I mean? Like in there, like not just the tongue, but like also the things around it, you know? It's noted that the stomach contained about 100 grams of dark brown mucus mass. This is used as an indication to some that the heart was still beating when the tongue was ripped out. And the cause of death is stated as hemorrhage of the right atrium of the heart, multiple fractured ribs, and internal bleeding. But, I mean, that's just crazy. Saman Zolotaryov. His eyeballs were missing soft tissues around the left eyebrow, bone is exposed, open wound to the right side of the skull with exposed bone, flail chest, broken ribs, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the right side, and 2 fracture lines. These 3 autopsies are like particularly vague compared to the first 4 victims, which is really interesting. So they both, Dubinina and Zolotaryov, had multiple fractures of the ribs, and saying that their chest was, smushed. And hemorrhaging into the pleural cavity, with these wounds appearing in such a way without any damage to the soft tissue of the chest, are very similar to the type of trauma that comes from the shockwave of a bomb. It's just so like there's no bruising or anything. It's just like the internalness was, that's crazy. So Dubinina died 10 to 20 minutes after the trauma took place. She would have been conscious. Basically, like, they think they both lived a decent amount of time after whatever happened. Alexander Koletov was 24. He was missing his hat and his shoes. He had a lack of soft tissues around his eyes. His eyebrows are missing. Evil bastards. Skull bones were completely exposed. The bridge of his nose was straight. Nose cartilage is soft, and when palpated and has unusual mobility, meaning that the base of the nose was like completely flattened with the nostrils compressed, which doesn't really mean broken. He could have just had it could have been the way he was decomposing. He had an open wound behind his ear, a deformed neck, and diffuse bleeding in the underlying tissues of the left knee. Softened and whitened skin of the fingers and feet consisted with putrefaction in a wet environment, and he had like an overall gray-green color skin tint. This autopsy also had like kind of a strange vagueness about the injuries. Nothing really said about the wound of the ear or the deformed neck. It's just like not really mentioned. And lastly, we have Nikolai Thibault-Brignole, who was 23. He wore 2 watches on his left arm, one stopped at 8:14, the other at 8:39. Cadaveric spots were discovered on the back of the upper body, neck, and upper extremities. Multiple fractures to the temporal bone with extensions to the frontal and sphenoid bones. The close-up of the fractures to the skull is shown in this picture, which I'll put up here. Bruise of the upper lip on one side, and hemorrhage of the lower forearm. That's it. They think that Thibault-Brignole's the damage to the head could have been the result of throwing, fall, or jettisoning off of the body. The person does not believe that the injuries could have been the result of a fall. It could be the impact. They say the impact is similar to the result of an automotive moving at a high speed. So if he had been thrown and fell and hit his head against a rock, or if there was a really strong gust of wind. They don't think that it's possible that a rock was like hit with someone's hand against his head because there was no damage to the soft tissue. Okay, crazy. Let's talk about some theories, all right? Because this is crazy. All right, so the theories are pretty wild for this. Like, there's a reason it's been now like 70 years, and this is still ultimately unsolved. But a lot of people think they know. So let's start with something that might be explicable, like an avalanche or a snow slab. So this actual area wasn't steep enough for there to be an avalanche they suspected. It was also not somewhere that was typical of having avalanches, but a snow slab, like a mini avalanche, is something that's more possible. That's where like a portion of the upper layer of the snow just like slightly shifts. That could kind of make sense for the like the crushing component, but then like the tongue thing, you know what I mean? Like, I also forgot to mention, but right around the death of the campers, the Dyatlov Pass hikers, a lot of people, including of the hikers, explain that they saw orange lights in the sky. They even got photos of it. There's also the theory of infrasound, which is a like sudden unpleasant sound that causes you to go crazy. It's a rare weather phenomenon that would have to be like a perfect storm scenario. I'm like, for me, sure, yeah, absolutely. I'm scared of everything. Like, that makes sense to me. If I heard a freaking eerie sound in the mountains, yeah, I'm scared. Yeah, I'm absolutely scared. Me and my girly pop, yeah, we're gonna talk about it and be like, something's fucking happening. But like, in those situations, I think of like all my dude bros who would be like, shut the fuck up, like, you're fine. You know what I mean? So it just doesn't really seem possible that all of them were like, oh my god, this is crazy. You know what I mean? Especially like dudes in their early 20s, like they don't fear God. So it just seems like really hard for me to believe. There's a ton of theories and I'm not gonna go into all of them. I'm just highlighting a few of them. One of the like really interesting ones is that there was some sort of like hand-to-hand combat that took place, because so many of the injuries, when like looked into, are like mimicking defensive wounds and hand bruising and blunt force objects being either thrown at the head, people thrown, or blunt force objects hit on the body, which is just like not really just like something that happens, you know? It's just really interesting. A lot of people speculate that this is a more sinister criminal disaster or like a man-made phenomenon type of thing. So we are in the Cold War here, you know. That's a really interesting part of history. You know, it's a completely different video, but it's something to keep in mind here. You know, we're not even Russia yet. We were in Soviet Russia. A lot of the theories kind of have to do with like the KGB or like secret weapons testing. My thing is like, it's like, there's no Occam's razor in this case. People have come out to say, like, they're in 2019 to 2020, then I think they like resurfaced the case again in America in 2021. They basically talked about how a slab avalanche is like the most possible and probable cause. But then at the end of like all of their findings, they're like, and then, yeah, maybe like the rest of them got eaten or something, you know, like there's a lot of it that is still, they're like, but the rest is, I don't know. Like, and then at that point, you're just saying the same thing. You're just saying you don't know. I agree that an avalanche could cause the kind of crushing, but like, wouldn't there be bruising? Also, eyes missing, tongue missing. Also, I forgot to mention, God, I'm so bad at this. It's fine, it's my video. A few of the members had like really large amounts of radiation found on them. One of these members worked in a radiation facility, which explained him. The other ones didn't, so that didn't really make a lot of sense. A lot of people also speculate that some of these wounds, specifically like the deformed neck, the blunt force objects, they coincide with injuries that may have been from the special forces, because they stumbled upon something they weren't supposed to see, or because they thought that they were criminals. A lot of people speculate that someone may have thought that they were like escaping from the gulag which would have been bad, you know. I mean, first of all, the gulag's bad. And then there's also a lot of, like, alien phenomenon, because all of these people see strange lights and crazy things. I mean, I think it's interesting to bring up at this time with everything that's going on, but my 2 cents, because it doesn't matter, but you clicked on this video for a reason. Similar to like the drone situation, there is so much that we don't know. There is so much that the government doesn't want us to know, because they just don't. They just don't, whether that be the existence of alien life or that they're doing shit. You know what I mean? Like fucking MK Ultra, you know? So my Occam's razor is kind of like, sounds like the government. You know what I mean? Like, not to be a conspiracy theorist, because it's not. Like, this is not like a tinfoil hat situation. This is like a, all of these people died really different deaths. We can't really blame it on one thing. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Another interesting phenomenon is the teleportation experiment. This one is like really, 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 really cool. And if you like this sort of thing, I implore you to delve into this more thoroughly. I would implore you to watch Devil's Pass. It's one of my favorite movies ever. It's why I got into the Dyatlov Pass incident so much. It explores this theory in like such a cool, brilliant way. And it is an indie horror film, and it is just delicious. So cannot recommend that film enough. You must go watch it. I'm excited to hear what you guys think. Like I said, this is one of my like favorite things to deep dive. And this was not like a proper deep dive, so I apologize. But this was kind of like a bare minimum about the Dyatlov Pass incident and some of the more interesting theories, I think. If you liked this, let me know. I would love to do more stuff like this. But also let me know what you think happened. Like I said, a lot of researchers suggest that a slab avalanche was, why do I keep saying it like I'm from fucking Minnesota? Slab avalanche. Whatever. I don't know. I'll see you Saturday for another video, I guess. And like and subscribe so you don't miss anything, okay? Bye, Pookies.